Hello everyone. Welcome to Dead Time Stories. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep. So before you drift off, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from. And if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, now let's get comfortable, relax, and dive into tonight's story. The realtor's smile didn't reach her eyes. It's been vacant for, some years, she said, tugging at the sleeve of her blazer as though it were suddenly too tight. Structurally sound. A bit of cosmetic work, but nothing major. And for the price. She let the unfinished sentence hang between them like bait. Daniel adjusted his glasses and peered at the old two-story house squatting at the end of the street. Its windows were clouded, the kind of glass that seemed to watch back. The paint peeled in strips, curling like parchment. He should have walked away. But the mortgage rates had been strangling him, and his divorce meant he needed somewhere cheap, anywhere, before winter settled in. His daughter, Lucy, tugged his hand. "Daddy, it smells funny." It did. A damp, earthy odor, not just old wood or mildew, but something faintly metallic underneath. Daniel tried to smile. "It just needs some fresh air, Luce. You'll see." The rooms were large but cold, even under a slant of afternoon sunlight. The hardwood floors were scuffed and groaned underfoot. Every step carried a faint echo that made Lucy keep glancing behind her. The kitchen was the worst. A ceiling stain spread outward like a dark starburst above the table. Daniel touched the counter, wincing at the tacky residue beneath his palm. The realtor spoke quickly, gesturing to the yard, the spacious basement, the attic storage, her voice sharp, eager to distract. Lucy wouldn't let go of his sleeve. "Dad, I don't like it here." He bent to her level. "It's just a house. Houses aren't scary. They're just walls and windows." But that night, when he signed the papers, the realtor's hand trembled faintly as she passed the pen across the table. And as Daniel scrawled his name, Lucy whispered something that made his stomach tighten. "There's already someone upstairs." The first night in the house was restless. Boxes piled high in the living room. Lucy refused to sleep in her room, so Daniel set up a mattress on the floor beside his. Around 3 a.m., he woke to the sound of running water. Not a drip, but a steady stream. He padded to the bathroom, half asleep. The faucet was dry. So was the kitchen sink. Yet the sound persisted, distant, like a pipe running somewhere deep inside the walls. He followed it to the basement door. It was shut, though he didn't remember closing it. The sound was louder there, rushing and gurgling like a brook beneath the foundation. He placed his hand on the knob but froze. A chill seeped up from the floor, colder than the autumn night outside. Behind him, Lucy's voice floated down the hallway. "Daddy? Who's in the basement?" Daniel's breath caught. He turned slowly, finding Lucy standing in the hallway in her pajamas, hair tangled from sleep. Her eyes weren't groggy, though. They were wide, fixed on the basement door as though she could see through it. "No one's down there," Daniel said, his voice steadier than he felt. "Go back to bed." She shook her head. "I heard them. They were whispering." His skin prickled. Daniel forced a laugh, the sound brittle in the quiet. He opened the basement door just enough to flick the switch. The light hummed, revealing wooden steps disappearing into a damp-smelling gloom. No voices. No water. Just silence, heavy and watchful. "See?" He left the door ajar and led Lucy back toward the bedroom. "Pipes make noise. Old houses settle. It's nothing." She didn't argue, but her small hand tightened around his wrist. When he finally lay back down, Daniel left the lamp burning. His eyes stayed open long after Lucy's breathing turned slow and even. At dawn, he found the basement door shut again. The following days blurred into chores. Unpacking, fixing outlets, scrubbing walls. Daniel buried himself in work, convincing himself the house was just old. He told Lucy the same, though she avoided her room completely. She sat cross-legged in the living room, sketching on the back of unpacked boxes, always glancing toward the stairwell. By the third day, Daniel noticed the drawings. Figures, tall and smudged, with blank circles for faces. Sometimes two, sometimes three, always hovering near a small child with pigtails. "Lucy," he said carefully, "these aren't very happy pictures." She kept coloring. "That's because they're not happy people." His mouth went dry. "What people?" She didn't look up. "The ones that walk around at night." That night, Daniel set an alarm for 2 a.m. He sat in the dark with a baseball bat across his lap, staring at the basement door. Hours passed. The house creaked, the wind rattled the gutters. Nothing unusual. He almost convinced himself Lucy's imagination was running wild, until the cold hit. A sudden drop, sharp and unnatural, like opening a freezer door. His breath misted in the air. And then came the footsteps. Slow, heavy, ascending the basement stairs. The knob began to turn. Daniel's grip on the bat tightened until his knuckles whitened. The knob twisted a fraction, then stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the sound, like the house was holding its breath, waiting for him to move. He forced himself up, each step deliberate, and pushed the door wide. Empty stairs. A light bulb swayed faintly overhead, though there was no draft. He took 2 steps down, heart hammering. The air was damp, acrid, and that metallic tang returned, coating his tongue. The rushing water sound flickered in and out, as though the house was teasing him. Then a whisper, low, sharp, right at his ear. "Leave!" He swung the bat wildly. Nothing there. The sound dissolved, echoing into the rafters. Daniel stumbled back up, slamming the door shut and locking it. He dragged a chair beneath the knob, then checked Lucy. She was still asleep, drawings scattered across her blanket. In the faint lamplight, one new sketch caught his eye, a staircase. On it, a dark shape crawled upward. The next morning, Daniel tried to convince himself it had been exhaustion. Stress. Divorce, moving, lack of sleep. It all had to be messing with his head. But Lucy noticed. "You're scared too," she said quietly over cereal. Daniel set his spoon down. "No. I'm just tired." She tilted her head, studying him. "They don't like you here. Lucy." His tone came out sharper than intended. She flinched. Guilt twisted his chest. "Sweetheart, I don't want you to make this place scarier than it is. We need to live here." She didn't answer. She pushed the cereal away and began another drawing. This one showed their house, with small black windows, and something larger looming over it, stretching out arms that touched the roof. Later that day, while fixing a leaky faucet, Daniel found the basement door wide open again. The chair was still wedged under the knob, untouched. That night, he dreamed of water. Rising, filling the basement, seeping up the stairs. He could hear it against the door, sloshing, pressing. Lucy was on the other side, knocking faintly. When he jolted awake, the knocking was still there. From the basement. The sound was deliberate. 3 knocks. A pause. 3 more. Daniel sat frozen on the mattress, sweat beading his forehead. Lucy stirred beside him but didn't wake. He pressed his palm against the lamp switch, flooding the room with light, though it did nothing to chase away the dread crawling up his spine. The knocks grew louder. Not frantic, measured, patient, like whoever was down there knew he was listening. He forced himself to the hallway, bat in hand. Each creak of the floor seemed deafening. The basement door loomed ahead, closed this time. He waited. Listened. Silence. The house was still. The air, however, had a weight to it, damp and electric, as if he'd walked into a storm cloud. Daniel laid his ear against the wood. Nothing. He exhaled shakily, fingers trembling on the knob, and then... bang! The door shuddered violently against him, rattling in its frame. He staggered back, heart slamming in his chest. He didn't think. He didn't dare open it. Instead, he dragged the hall table against the door, stacked boxes on top, barricading it until the frame groaned under the weight. When he turned, Lucy stood in the hallway, eyes too calm for a child. "You shouldn't make them angry," she whispered. The following day, Daniel called a plumber, desperate to rationalize the sounds. The man, thick-armed and practical, carried a toolbox downstairs. "Looks dry as a bone down here," the plumber said, his voice echoing from below. "Pipes are old, sure, but nothing's running." Daniel lingered at the top of the steps, unwilling to go down himself. "You don't hear it? Like water rushing?" The plumber chuckled. "Nah. If anything, you might have air trapped in the lines. Easy fix." But when the man emerged 15 minutes later, his face was pale. He avoided Daniel's eyes as he packed up his tools. "What is it?" Daniel pressed. "Nothing." The man wiped his hands on his overalls. "Basement's fine. You'll be fine." He left so quickly he forgot to shut the front door behind him. That evening, Lucy sat sketching again. This time, the figures had mouths, wide, dark smears across their faces. She slid the paper toward her father without a word. Daniel stared. The figures were no longer hovering in the background. They were standing in the living room. Daniel crumpled the drawing, though his hand shook as he did it. "Enough," he muttered, more to himself than Lucy. "We're not feeding this nonsense anymore." Lucy's lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't argue. She only glanced toward the corner of the room, the exact spot where the tallest figure had been drawn. That night, Daniel tried to re-establish routine. Dinner, dishes, a board game with Lucy before bed. He almost convinced himself things were normal. Almost. Until the TV flickered on by itself. Static roared across the screen, bright and loud in the dim room. Daniel fumbled for the remote, slamming the power button. The screen went black. He set the remote down, heart racing. Then the static returned, louder this time. Only now, behind the noise, came voices. Not one, but many. Layered, indistinct. Some were whispering, others groaning, others laughing softly. Lucy covered her ears. "They're coming through." The screen shifted. For an instant, just long enough for Daniel's mind to doubt itself, he swore he saw their living room on the screen. The same couch. The same lamp. But in the corner, where Lucy had looked earlier, something tall leaned forward. He yanked the cord from the wall. The screen died. The silence afterward was worse. Daniel didn't sleep. He sat in the kitchen, staring at the disconnected TV as though it might still wake. By dawn, he'd made a decision. They'd leave. Maybe not for good, but for a few nights. A hotel, anywhere else. But when he checked his phone, his stomach dropped. The screen was spiderwebbed with cracks. He hadn't dropped it. The charger cord had been yanked out, frayed at the end. "Daddy?" Lucy's voice was small. She stood in the doorway, hair sticking up from sleep. In her hands was another drawing, one she hadn't shown him yet. It was the TV. Black lines for static. And in the middle, scrawled in thick strokes, a face. Round. Wide. Hollow eyes staring outward. Beneath it, in a child's careful letters, she had written. It said your name. Daniel stared at her, throat tight. "Did you hear it, Lucy?" She nodded once. It said it over and over. That was when the TV flickered on again, still unplugged. The unplugged TV glowed in the gray morning light, static washing across the screen. Daniel's chest tightened as a low hum filled the room, vibrating through the floorboards. Lucy stood frozen. "Don't look at it," she whispered. But Daniel couldn't stop. The static shifted, shapes forming and collapsing, until words clawed their way through the distortion. "Daniel!" His name. Clear. Dragged out like a rasping breath. He stumbled back, nearly knocking over the chair. The screen darkened, then flashed again, revealing a flicker of the basement door. Not just a door, a hand pressed against it. Pale. Thin fingers splayed wide, straining. Daniel ripped a blanket from the couch and threw it over the screen, his breath coming fast. The sound muffled but didn't stop. The voices kept saying his name, over and over, layered with others he couldn't recognize. He grabbed Lucy's coat. "We're leaving. Now." She didn't argue. She clung to him, her small face buried in his shirt as he dragged her toward the door. But when he twisted the knob, it refused to turn. The deadbolt shifted on its own, sliding into place with a hollow click. Daniel yanked harder, panic rising. No, no, no! Behind him, the TV screamed. The blanket burst upward, flung as if by unseen hands. The screen blazed white, so bright it painted the walls. From inside the static, a shape struggled forward, pressing its face against the glass. Its mouth opened wider than it should, tearing at the edges of its jaw. Lucy screamed. Daniel hurled the TV onto the floor. It shattered, sparks hissing across the rug. Smoke curled upward. The noise cut off instantly, leaving only the crackle of burning circuits. The house fell silent. Daniel grabbed his keys from the counter, scooped Lucy up, and bolted for the back door. His hands shook as he twisted the lock, praying it would open. This one did. The door flew wide, cold air rushing inside. They ran. Across the overgrown yard, down the cracked sidewalk. Daniel didn't stop until they reached the car. He shoved Lucy inside, fumbling the ignition. The engine coughed, then roared alive. As he threw the car into gear, Lucy whispered without looking at him. "They won't let us go far." Daniel's knuckles whitened on the wheel. "Don't say that." But in the rearview mirror, the house loomed smaller with distance, except for the window on the second floor, where something was still watching. Daniel drove until the house was miles behind them. His pulse didn't slow until they pulled into a gas station off the highway. The morning sun had finally broken over the horizon, painting everything gold, but it didn't touch the unease clamped around his chest. He bought Lucy a hot chocolate from the machine inside and tried to steady his shaking hands with a cup of bitter coffee. They sat in silence in the car, steam fogging the windows. Finally, Lucy spoke. "They're not in the house anymore." Daniel's throat tightened. "What do you mean?" She stared down into the swirl of chocolate. "They followed us. They're in the car." A cold draft brushed the back of Daniel's neck, though the heater was running. He twisted around, scanning the empty seats, the trunk space. Nothing. But the smell was there, the metallic tang, faint but undeniable. "Lucy," he said carefully, "we're going to Grandma's. Just for a little while." Lucy nodded, though her expression was far older than her years. As Daniel pulled back onto the road, he caught sight of his reflection in the side mirror. For just a moment, his eyes weren't his own. They were hollow, dark, and endless. He blinked hard, nearly swerving into the opposite lane. When he looked again, the reflection was normal. But the coffee in his cup holder had begun to ripple, as though something unseen had shifted its weight inside the car. They reached his mother's small farmhouse by early afternoon. The old woman welcomed them with open arms, fussing over Lucy and setting out food. Daniel forced a smile, grateful for the warmth and familiarity. But the relief didn't last. While Lucy napped on the couch, Daniel stepped onto the porch for air. That's when he noticed the shadows. They didn't line up with the trees or the fence. They bent the wrong way, long and reaching, curling toward the house even as the sun moved. His mother came to the door. "You look pale, Danny. Are you sure you're all right?" He wanted to tell her everything, but the words felt heavy, dangerous. Like speaking them aloud would make it worse. Instead, he said, "Just tired. The house, it's been a lot." She patted his arm, though her eyes flicked uneasily to the tree line. "Well, you're safe here." But that night, Daniel woke to the sound of whispering. Not from the farmhouse. From inside his own head. And among the voices, one rose clearer than the rest. "You signed your name. You belong to us." Daniel bolted upright, drenched in sweat. The farmhouse bedroom was quiet except for the tick of the old wall clock. The whispering faded, but the words clung to him, sour and sticky, as though they'd been burned into his brain. He crept into the living room. Lucy was curled up on the couch under a quilt, her thumb tucked near her mouth the way she hadn't done since she was much younger. His mother's snores drifted from her room down the hall. Everything looked safe. But the shadows weren't right. The lamp cast a soft circle of light, and yet something else was moving across the far wall, something tall, stretching unnaturally toward the ceiling. Daniel gripped the doorway, breath shallow. The shape swayed, slow and deliberate, before folding back into nothing. Daniel sank into the armchair, burying his face in his hands. He couldn't keep pretending this was stress or coincidence. Something had taken notice of them the moment he signed those papers. He thought of the realtor's trembling hand, the way she hadn't looked him in the eye. She knew. She had to. The tick of the clock grew louder, harsher, until Daniel realized it wasn't ticking at all. It was knocking, from beneath the floorboards. The next morning, Daniel told his mother he needed to run an errand back in town. She frowned, but he brushed off her questions and promised Lucy would be safe with her. The realtor's office was small, tucked into a strip mall between a pawn shop and a nail salon. When Daniel walked in, she stiffened, as if she'd been expecting him. "You moved in," she said flatly. Not a question. Daniel slammed his palms against her desk. "What the hell is that place? What did you sell me?" Her eyes darted to the blinds, then back to him. "Keep your voice down. You knew." His voice cracked. "The noises, the shadows, He broke off, realizing how insane he must sound. The realtor leaned forward, her face pale. "If you heard them already, then it's too late." Daniel's stomach lurched. "Too late for what?" "You signed," she whispered. "You claimed the debt. That house doesn't want owners. It wants occupants." He stared at her, unblinking. "Then how do I break it?" For the first time, her mask of professionalism slipped. Fear hollowed her expression. "You don't." Daniel's hands curled into fists. "There has to be a way." The realtor shook her head, gaze fixed on the papers stacked neatly on her desk. "That house isn't just wood and brick. It was built over something. Old land, old promises. Every signature binds another family." Daniel's throat went dry. "So it feeds on us?" She flinched but didn't deny it. "Then why sell it?" His voice was low, dangerous. "Because it won't let itself stay empty." Her eyes finally met his, wide and wet. "When the last family fled, they didn't make it far. I had to put it back on the market. I didn't have a choice." Daniel staggered back from the desk, bow rising in his throat. He could still hear Lucy's words from the car. "They're not in the house anymore." "You should never have signed," the realtor whispered. He left before she could say more, fury and dread tangling in his chest. The autumn sky above seemed too dim, as though daylight itself didn't reach him anymore. When he returned to the farmhouse, Lucy was waiting on the porch. Her quilt was wrapped around her shoulders. "They came last night," she said softly. Daniel's stomach turned. "What did they do?" Her small voice barely carried. "They walked through Grandma's room." Daniel rushed inside. His mother sat in her chair at the kitchen table, clutching her rosary beads. She looked up, her face ashen. "I prayed," she whispered. "I prayed until the sun rose. But they didn't care." Daniel dropped into the chair across from her. His hands trembled as he reached for hers. "We'll leave. We'll get a hotel, leave the state." "No." She pulled her hand away, her voice firm despite the fear in her eyes. "They're tied to you. To your name. Running won't change it." Lucy hovered in the doorway, silent. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying. Daniel stood abruptly. "Then I'll burn it down." His mother's face hardened. "Fire won't erase what's beneath it." The room chilled. The rosary beads slipped through her fingers and clattered against the wood, though she hadn't moved. Lucy turned slowly toward the window. Her breath fogged the glass, though the air outside was warm. "They're here," she whispered. And then the knocking started again. This time, from every wall at once. The farmhouse shook with the rhythm of the knocking, slow, deliberate, surrounding them. Daniel grabbed Lucy and pulled her close, his heart hammering. His mother clutched the rosary again, whispering prayers so fast they tangled into each other. Then the lights flickered. Once, twice, before cutting out entirely. In the darkness, the sound changed. No longer knocking. Now it was footsteps. Heavy. Dragging. Pacing the perimeter of the house. "Stay here," Daniel hissed, though his voice cracked. He snatched the flashlight from the counter, its beams slicing through the dark. He edged toward the window, pulse roaring in his ears. The yard was empty. The trees stood still, not a branch swaying. And yet the footsteps circled closer, deliberate and unhurried, as though the things outside knew there was nowhere to run. Lucy tugged his sleeve. "They don't need doors." Her words proved true when the cold hit. A sudden, suffocating chill swept through the room, frosting the inside of the windowpane. Daniel swung the flashlight wildly, and in its beam he saw them, shapes pressed against the walls from the inside out, their faceless heads bending, stretching the wallpaper like wet fabric. His mother screamed, the sound ragged. The rosary snapped, beads scattering across the floor. The walls began to breathe. The wallpaper pulsed inward and outward, as though the house itself were alive, inhaling them. Daniel yanked Lucy back, stumbling into the hallway. The flashlight beam caught glimpses, fingers stretching from plaster, hollow eyes blinking open in the wood grain. His mother's voice rose above the chaos. "It wants you, Danny! Only you!" The words hit like a blow. Daniel spun toward her, but she was already pushing Lucy into his arms. "Take her! Get out! I can't leave you!" Daniel shouted, the hallway rattling around them. "You don't have a choice!" she screamed. And then the floor beneath her chair splintered, cracking open. Dark water gushed upward, flooding across the boards. She gasped, clutching at the table as hands, too many hands, reached from the blackness, wrapping around her ankles. Daniel lunged forward, but Lucy's shriek stopped him. The water was spreading, swallowing the kitchen whole. His mother's eyes met his, fierce and tearful. "Go!" And with a violent pull, she was dragged under. The boards sealed shut as if nothing had broken them. Only silence remained. Lucy buried her face in Daniel's chest, sobbing. He held her, shaking, staring at the untouched floor where his mother had just been. The house had followed them. Daniel staggered back, clutching Lucy so tightly she whimpered. His mother's absence left the air hollow, a silence that throbbed in his ears. He could still smell her perfume, lavender and powder, hanging faintly in the room, now tainted by the metallic stink of water and rot. The farmhouse creaked around them, timbers groaning as though it were settling into a shape it had never taken before. Daniel backed into the hall, fumbling for the front door. It opened too easily, too willingly. Cold night air rushed in. "Come on," he muttered, dragging Lucy outside. The yard stretched before them, pale in the moonlight. He expected freedom. Instead, the field beyond the fence was gone. In its place stood the house. Not the farmhouse, the other house. His house. The hollow house. Its windows glared like black sockets, its roofline jagged against the stars. The distance between them was wrong. It leaned closer than the land should allow, as if the earth itself had folded. Lucy whimpered. "Daddy, it followed!" The door of the hollow house creaked open. From the darkness inside, something moved. Not rushing, not attacking. Just waiting. Daniel's grip on Lucy tightened. "We run." But every direction he turned, the house loomed there, impossibly tall, impossibly near. It wasn't just following them. It had swallowed them. Daniel fell to his knees, clutching Lucy, the reality settling in his chest like ice. They had never truly left. Every road, every mile, an illusion. The moment he signed his name, they had been marked. Lucy buried her face in his shoulder. "It wants you," she whispered, echoing his mother's final words. "Not me. No." His voice was hoarse, desperate. "I won't let it take you." A voice rose from the open doorway, deep and wet, layered like a chorus in a cavern. "You already did." Daniel staggered to his feet. "What do you want?" he shouted into the night. The windows shuddered, black liquid streaking down the glass. The voice answered from everywhere at once. "Debt. Blood. A name given." A name kept. The ground split open beneath him, water gurgling up through the cracks. Daniel scooped Lucy higher in his arms, searching for any break in the circle of shifting houses. But no matter where he turned, the hollow house loomed closer, its doorway stretching wider. Lucy lifted her head, eyes glistening. "Daddy, if you go, maybe you'll let me go." The thought lanced through him. His little girl, bargaining with a thing she could barely comprehend. And the worst part, he knew she was right. Daniel's legs buckled beneath the weight of her words. He pressed his forehead against Lucy's hair, the world spinning around them. He had already lost his mother. He couldn't lose Lucy too. "No," he whispered fiercely. "I'll find another way." The ground lurched, water seeping higher, soaking his shoes. From the yawning door of the hollow house, figures began to emerge. They were taller than he remembered from Lucy's drawings, their limbs impossibly long, their faceless heads tilting in grotesque curiosity. They didn't rush. They didn't need to. Lucy clung to him, trembling. "They said you promised?" Daniel's jaw clenched. The signature. His hand on that paper, ink still wet. The realtor's trembling fingers. He had signed, and in doing so, he had offered himself. "Stay behind me," he told Lucy, setting her gently on the ground. He tightened his grip on the bat he had carried from the farmhouse, its wood slick with sweat. His body felt small, fragile against the enormity of what approached, but rage flared in his chest. "You want me?" he shouted at the advancing shapes. His voice cracked but carried through the damp air. "Then you take me. Leave her out of it." The figure stopped. For a moment, the night held its breath. Then, in one fluid motion, they turned their hollow faces toward Lucy. Her whimper tore through him like glass. Daniel swung the bat. The wood cracked against one of the figures, and the sound was wrong. Not flesh, not bone, something brittle, like striking frozen branches. The figure shuddered, its arm bending backward at an impossible angle. But it didn't fall. Instead, the others surged forward, their long hands reaching. Daniel swung wildly, connecting again and again, each strike met with that same splintering resistance. For every one that staggered, two more pressed closer. Lucy's scream pierced the chaos. She was being pulled backward, her ankles caught by hands rising from the wet ground. Pale, boneless fingers coiled around her legs, dragging her toward the dark water spreading beneath them. "No!" Daniel dropped the bat and lunged, clawing at her arms. The ground was slick, the water freezing, the hands unrelenting. His muscles strained as he pulled with everything left in him. The faceless figures loomed above, silent, patient, as if this was only the beginning of what they intended to do. Daniel's voice broke as he screamed into the night. "Take me instead! Do you hear me? Take me!" The figures froze. The water stilled. And then, slowly, they released Lucy. She scrambled into his arms, sobbing. But before Daniel could breathe, the ground beneath his own feet split wide, and hands seized him. The hands shot up from the waterlogged ground, wrapping his calves, his thighs, his waist. Their grip was iron cold, pulling him downward with a force he couldn't fight. Daniel clawed at the earth, his nails tearing against the mud. Lucy's screams echoed in his ears as she clung to his arm. "Daddy! Don't let go!" Her small fingers dug into his wrist, desperate, but the pull was relentless. The faceless figures loomed closer, watching, as though this was a ritual, not a struggle. The open doorway of the hollow house yawned wider, its darkness swallowing the horizon. Daniel's mind raced. His mother's words. The realtor's pale face. The whispers in the farmhouse. "It wants you. It only wants you." He forced his voice through gritted teeth. "Lucy, listen to me. Run! I'm not leaving you!" She sobbed, tugging harder. The water was at his waist now, black and slick, chilling him to the bone. The hands were everywhere, clawing, climbing, dragging him down inch by inch. He could see his reflection in the surface, eyes hollow, mouth open in a silent scream. He thought of the nights she had crawled into his bed after her nightmares, of teaching her to ride her bike, of her laughter when she called him her hero. If the house wanted debt, then he would pay it. He wrenched his arm free from her grip with a roar. "Go, Lucy! Don't look back!" She screamed his name as the ground gave way. And Daniel was swallowed whole. Darkness crushed him. It wasn't just the absence of light, it was weight, pressure, something vast and endless pressing against every inch of him. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't move. Whispers filled the void, thousands of voices layered and rising, clawing at his mind. They spoke in fragments, in languages he didn't know, but one word cut through again and again. "Ours!" He flailed, but his limbs met no resistance. He was falling, suspended in black water that had no surface, no floor. Faces flickered past him, his mother's, pale and screaming as she was dragged under, Lucy's, weeping, reaching for him, strangers, dozens, hundreds, all with hollow eyes. Daniel tried to scream but swallowed only liquid, thick and metallic. His chest burned. His body convulsed. Still the whispers pressed closer, invading, filling him until he thought he would split apart. Then, through the roar of voices, one rose above the rest. "Calm. Patient. You signed. You are home." The darkness stilled. And Daniel opened his eyes. He was standing in his living room. The hollow house. Only this time, it wasn't empty. Figures crowded the corners, the walls, the ceiling. All of them staring. All of them waiting. Daniel's lungs heaved, but the air here was thick, damp, heavy with the stink of rust and mold. The figures filled every edge of the room, their blank faces angled toward him. They didn't move, but the walls pulsed faintly as though breathing in rhythm with them. His throat was raw when he spoke. "Where's my daughter?" A ripple passed through the crowd. Heads turned toward the staircase. Slowly, Daniel followed their gaze. At the top of the steps stood Lucy, only she wasn't Lucy. Her eyes were sunken, black voids stretching wider than they should. Her mouth opened, and when she spoke, the words came layered with countless other voices. "She is yours no longer." Daniel staggered back. "No! You promised!" "You said..." The figures leaned closer, swaying as one. The house groaned around them. From the ceiling, water dripped steadily, pooling at his feet. Each drop echoed like a drumbeat. Lucy stepped down one stair, then another. Her face flickered, his little girl's features appearing for a heartbeat before melting back into the hollow mask. "Daddy," she whispered, her true voice breaking through for a moment. Daniel surged forward, reaching for her. "Luce! Fight them! You can fight them!" The shadows writhed violently at his words. A sound like splintering wood filled the room, and the floorboards began to split. Hands pushed through, clawing upward. Lucy's body shuddered as if torn between two tides. Her hands reached for him. "Help me!" Daniel grabbed her, but the moment their skin touched, pain seared up his arm. His vision blurred with white-hot light, his body convulsing. The voices roared, furious, echoing in his skull. "Dead cannot be shared." The force hurled him backward, slamming him into the wall. He gasped, coughing water though he hadn't swallowed any. His arm burned, veins bulging black beneath his skin where he had touched her. Lucy collapsed on the steps, trembling, her face flickering between herself and the hollow-eyed version. Tears streaked down her cheeks. "Daddy, it hurts." Daniel forced himself up, ignoring the agony coursing through him. "Then take me. Let her go." The figures hissed as one, a sound like boiling water. The dripping from the ceiling quickened, sheets of black liquid pouring down the walls. The house shuddered, tilting, as though sinking deeper into some abyss. From the staircase, Lucy's body jerked unnaturally, lifted by invisible strings. Her head tilted, and the voices poured from her mouth again. "You cannot free what is already claimed." Daniel staggered forward, fury overtaking fear. "Then I'll tear this house down with my own hands." The walls groaned, splitting further, but the faceless crowd surged between him and Lucy. Hands reached, grasping, pulling at his clothes, his skin, dragging him down again. For a moment, just before he was swallowed into the throng, he heard Lucy's voice again, faint, but hers. Daddy, don't stop. The faceless horde dragged Daniel into the floor, their cold fingers gouging his arms, his chest, his legs. He kicked and fought, teeth gritted against the crushing weight. His body sank into the boards as though they were liquid, pulling him into a darkness thicker than any night. Yet above the roar of voices, Lucy's cry cut through, her real voice small but fierce. Daddy, fight them! The words lit something in him. Rage. Love. Desperation. He drove his elbow into the faceless grip on his throat, tearing free for just a second. He clawed at the boards, dragging himself back up inch by inch. The wood splintered beneath his fingers, cutting him, but he didn't stop. The figures hissed louder, pressing harder, but the house itself groaned as if straining under the struggle. Daniel forced his head above the boards, gasping. The living room swam in his vision, warped and wrong, but Lucy was still on the staircase. Her hands trembled, her face flickering between hollow-eyed horror and his daughter. Hold on, Luce! He choked out. The house screamed. The sound wasn't human. It was wood and water and stone tearing at once. The walls bowed inward, shadows pouring like liquid down the staircase. Daniel hauled himself up, every muscle burning, until he was free of the floor's grip. He staggered to his feet, swaying. His arm was blackened to the elbow, veins twisting like roots, but he didn't care. He had one thought left: get to her. He barreled forward, shoving through the crowd of faceless shapes. Each touch burned, sapping his strength, but he forced his way closer. Their featureless heads bent toward him, but none struck, only restrained, slowed, as though toying with him. Lucy! His voice cracked, echoing through the trembling house. Her head snapped toward him, her eyes suddenly clear. Daddy! For an instant, she broke free. Her small legs scrambled down 2 stairs before the black liquid surged upward, wrapping around her ankles. She screamed, reaching toward him. Daniel leapt, catching her hand. The moment their skin touched, the house roared again, shadows thrashing violently, trying to tear them apart. Pain seared his arm, nearly blinding him, but he held fast. I've got you! He gasped. I'm not letting go this time. The walls buckled, the ceiling cracked, and torrents of black water cascaded down. The figures writhed, losing form, their blank faces melting into the flood. Daniel pulled with everything he had, dragging Lucy against the pull of the house itself. The staircase splintered beneath them, the wood giving way with sharp cracks. Lucy clung to him, sobbing into his chest. It hurts, Daddy! I know, he whispered, clutching her tighter. But you're stronger than it. We're stronger. The shadows screamed, the sound fracturing into 1,000 voices. And then, abruptly, everything went still. The house exhaled, and the floor beneath them collapsed. The boards gave way beneath Daniel and Lucy, and they plunged into darkness. Cold water swallowed them whole, dragging them down. Daniel kicked furiously, his arms locked around his daughter. His lungs burned, but he refused to release her. The deeper they sank, the louder the whispers grew. Thousands of voices swarmed through the black, pressing against his skull until his thoughts blurred. Faces flickered all around, pale, bloated, their mouths opening and closing in silent screams. Lucy writhed in his grip, her small body convulsing. He could feel the house trying to pull her away, twisting her form into something hollow and empty. Her eyes fluttered, rolling back. No! Daniel screamed, though water filled his mouth. The sound ripped through him like fire. You can't have her! Light pierced the black for the first time, a faint glow far below, like the outline of a door. Daniel kicked toward it, lungs screaming, body trembling with exhaustion. The whispers sharpened into shrieks. Figures clutched at him, dragging him back. With a final, desperate roar, he pushed forward, every ounce of strength poured into reaching the glow. His vision blurred, chest convulsing, until his hand slammed against something solid. A door. He shoved it open, and he and Lucy fell through. They tumbled onto hardwood, coughing violently, drenched to the bone. Daniel gasped, his lungs clawing for air, Lucy hacking against his chest. He pulled her close, kissing the top of her head, trembling with relief. The room was quiet. Too quiet. He forced his head up. They were in the living room again, the Hollow House's living room. Only now it was different. Clean. Sunlight streamed through the windows, warming the air. The peeling wallpaper was fresh, the floor polished. It looked lived in, safe. "Daddy?" Lucy's voice was faint, raw. Did we make it out?" Daniel swallowed hard. He wanted to say yes. God, he wanted to believe it. But when he looked at the window, his chest iced over. Their reflections stared back, not his tired, broken face, not Lucy's pale and tear-streaked one. The glass showed them hollow-eyed, mouths open in silent screams, hands pressed against the inside. Daniel stood slowly, pulling Lucy behind him. The sunlight dimmed, fading as though the glass itself were drinking it in. "No," he whispered, his throat raw. "Not yet." The front door creaked open on its own, and from the threshold, the whispers returned. The whispers slithered through the doorway like a draft, carrying words Daniel couldn't fully catch, half-formed syllables, guttural moans, fragments of his name. Lucy clutched his hand, her fingers icy cold. "Don't listen," he whispered, though his own ears strained against his will, pulled toward the sound. It was seductive now, coaxing instead of threatening. He backed them away from the door, but the house shifted with each step. The walls stretched taller, the floorboards rippled like water beneath their feet. No matter which way he turned, the door stayed ahead of them, widening, waiting. "Daddy," Lucy whispered, tugging his sleeve. "Look!" Her gaze fixed on the ceiling. Daniel followed, and his stomach dropped. Hundreds of faces bulged through the plaster above, pressing outward as if trapped behind a thin membrane. Their mouths gaped, silently screaming, their eyes rolling wildly. He recognized some of them, the plumber, the realtor, his mother. And in the center, his own face stared down at him. The air grew colder. The voices fused into one deep, rumbling tone. "One leaves. One stays." Daniel's knees weakened. He pulled Lucy close, burying her against him. "No. You're not taking her." The house groaned violently, beams snapping, glass rattling in their frames. "One leaves. One stays." Lucy looked up at him, tears streaming. "They mean you." Daniel cupped her face, forcing a smile through his terror. "Then I'll stay. I'll stay forever. And you'll run. You'll live." But the faces above only smiled, stretching their mouths until the plaster cracked. "It is not your choice." The door yawned wider, a tunnel of black sucking the air from the room. Wind whipped through, dragging papers, splintered wood, even shards of glass toward the void. Daniel held Lucy tight, bracing against the pull. She screamed, her feet lifting from the floor. He dropped to his knees, wrapping both arms around her waist, his nails digging into the boards to anchor them. "Hold on, Luce!" he shouted over the roar. Her small hands clung to his shirt. "Daddy, it's too strong!" The black wind pulled harder, stripping paint from the walls, ripping wallpaper in long, screaming curls. The faces in the ceiling laughed soundlessly, their mouths gaping wider as if savoring the moment. Daniel's grip slipped. His fingers bled against the jagged wood. Then Lucy did something that froze him with terror. She let go. Her eyes, bright with tears but steady, met his. "It only wants one. If I go, you'll be safe." "No!" Daniel roared, catching her wrist as the wind yanked her upward. His arms stretched, veins blackened, skin splitting, but he refused to let her go. "I won't lose you!" he cried. The voices thundered together, shaking the house to its foundation. "One leaves. One stays. Choose." Daniel's vision blurred with tears. His arm burned where the black veins spread, the house gnawing at his flesh as punishment for resisting. Lucy dangled above him, her small wrists locked in his grip, her body pulled toward the swirling void of the door. "I won't let them take you!" he shouted, his voice raw. Lucy sobbed, shaking her head. "Daddy, please, you have to let go. If it takes me, you'll be free." The words cut deeper than any wound. He could feel the truth in them, the weight of the bargain. The house wasn't bluffing. It would settle for her. His release, bought with his daughter's life. But Daniel thought of the divorce, the long nights of holding her hand through nightmares, the way she had smiled when he promised things would get better. He had already failed her once by bringing her into that cursed house. He would not fail her again. No, he growled, pulling her down with every shred of strength left in him. His muscles screamed, his body tearing, but he dragged her inch by inch away from the pull. "You are mine, Lucy. Not theirs." The floor cracked beneath his knees. Water seeped up again, black and stinking, trying to drown them both. Daniel roared, forcing himself upright, clutching her against his chest. The voices shrieked in fury. "Then you stay." Hands shot up from the boards, clawing his legs, his waist, his chest. He wrapped himself around Lucy, shielding her as the house swallowed him whole. Cold rushed in from every angle, drowning out light, sound, and air. Daniel clung to Lucy, his body crushed beneath unseen hands. The whispers filled his skull, pounding in rhythm with his heartbeat. Lucy's cries were muffled against his chest. "Daddy, I'm scared. I've got you," he gasped, though his voice cracked, breaking under the weight. "I'm not letting go." The darkness convulsed. For a moment, Daniel thought he saw the living room again, the clean, sunlit version. He saw himself standing there, alone, hollow-eyed, mouth stretched in an endless scream. The vision shattered. The void tightened, pressing harder. The house demanded its due. Daniel's mind raced. It wanted one, not both. One life, one debt. If he didn't choose, it would take them both. He pressed his lips against Lucy's forehead. Her tears burned hot against his frozen skin. "I love you," he whispered. "More than anything." Her small hands clutched his shirt. "Don't leave me, Daddy. Please!" The voices screamed again, louder, overlapping, demanding. "Choose." Daniel clenched his jaw. He had made his choice the moment he signed his name. "Take me," he growled into the darkness. "Take me and let her go." The void stilled. And then Lucy was ripped from his arms. Daniel screamed as Lucy was torn from his grasp, her small body flung upward into the dark. Her voice echoed in the void, shrill and terrified, but then, suddenly, it was gone. The silence that followed was worse. Daniel clawed at the black, his hands raking through nothing. "Bring her back!" he roared, his voice breaking. His chest heaved with rage, grief, and terror. "You hear me? You take me, not her!" The whispers returned, curling around him, slick and poisonous. "The debt is ours to collect." He was hurled downward, deeper into the endless dark. Water slammed against his body, crushing, twisting. He lost all sense of up or down, of breath or time. When the pressure eased, he was standing again, in the hollow house's basement. But it wasn't the same. The walls dripped with black water. The steps behind him were gone, dissolved into shadow. Chains hung from the ceiling, rattling faintly though there was no wind. The air buzzed with whispers that crawled across his skin. And in the far corner, Lucy stood. Her back was to him. Her dress clung wet to her small frame, her hair hanging limp. "Lucy!" Daniel staggered forward. Relief cracked through him like sunlight. "Oh God, Lucy!" She turned slowly. Her face was hollow. Black eyes stretched wide, her mouth warped into an empty O. When she spoke, the voices poured out, not hers, never hers. "You gave her to us." Daniel stumbled backward, shaking his head violently. "No! No, I didn't. I offered myself. I chose me." The hollow version of Lucy tilted her head, water streaming from her hair. Her mouth opened wider, too wide, splitting at the corners. "You chose. And still, you lost." Daniel dropped to his knees, his chest caving. "Please," he begged. "Please don't do this. Take me, damn it! Take me!" The basement floor rippled like a pond. Pale arms surged up, grasping his wrists, his ankles, holding him fast. He thrashed, screaming. but the water only tightened, biting into his skin like shackles. Lucy's hollow form stepped closer, her feet leaving dark prints on the boards. The whispers rose, 1,000 voices merging into one word. Ours. Daniel forced his gaze into the black pits where her eyes should have been. Somewhere deep, beneath the endless void, he thought he saw a flicker, just a spark of his daughter's real eyes. Lucy, he rasped, straining against the hands. If you can hear me, fight them. Please, baby, fight them. For a heartbeat, her body trembled. Her hands rose to her head, clutching at her skull as if trying to tear it open. The voices faltered, breaking into jagged static. Then, faintly, her real voice slipped through. Daddy, help me! Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs. That voice, it was hers. His Lucy, buried beneath the tide of whispers. I'm here! He cried, fighting the pale hands that held him. His wrists bled where their grip dug deep, but he didn't care. Hold on, Luce! Don't let them win. The hollow version of her writhed body jerking unnaturally as the voices screamed in fury. Her face flickered, black void 1 second, his daughter's terrified features the next. Daniel planted his feet against the slick boards and pulled, wrenching against the grip of the hands. His veins burned, his body screaming, but he ripped one arm free. With it, he slammed his fist against the floor, splintering the rotten wood. The whispers faltered. The hands hesitated. Daniel's voice thundered into the basement. You don't own her! You never will! The ceiling cracked overhead. Water poured down in torrents, black and choking, trying to drown him. Daniel fought through it, staggering to his feet. He lunged forward, grabbing Lucy's trembling shoulders. For a moment, the house itself seemed to convulse. The walls shivered, chains clattering, voices shrieking louder than ever. Lucy screamed too, but this time it was her voice, raw, human, terrified. I can't, she sobbed. They're too strong. Daniel pulled her close, his forehead pressed against hers. No, baby. You're stronger. You're my girl. You fight with me. Her small hands gripped his shirt. He could feel her shaking. Then, like a spark catching in the dark, her eyes cleared. The faceless crowd that filled the basement recoiled. The figures writhed, their blank faces distorting into jagged holes as the whispers broke into howls. The water surged higher, but the air around Lucy seemed to push back. Daniel held her tighter, shielding her as the house raged. Every board groaned, every chain snapped against the walls. The basement shuddered as though it might tear itself apart. Lucy's voice rose above the chaos, trembling but firm. You can't have me! The effect was instant. The faceless things screamed, recoiling as if burned. Their forms stretched and thinned, dissolving into mist. The water around Daniel's legs receded, steaming as though boiled away. The hollow reflection of Lucy staggered backward, her face splitting down the middle. From the crack spilled a black, oily light, pulsing violently. Daniel yanked Lucy behind him, bracing himself. Stay back! The hollow double shrieked, the sound high and sharp, splintering the boards beneath them. The voices swelled again, desperate, and raged. The debt is eternal! Daniel bared his teeth. Then choke on it! The hollow double lurched forward, claws reaching. Daniel swung his free arm, striking it across the chest. The thing burst apart in a spray of shadows and black water, vanishing into the air. The basement heaved one last time. Then silence. Daniel collapsed to his knees, Lucy in his arms, both of them trembling. The air was still. The whispers were gone. But in the silence, Daniel couldn't shake the thought houses don't give up their debts so easily. Daniel knelt on the soaked boards, his chest heaving, Lucy clutched tight against him. Her breathing was ragged but steady, her small fingers tangled in his shirt. For the first time in what felt like forever, the basement was silent. No whispers, no water, no faceless crowd. But silence was its own kind of terror. Daniel lifted his head. The walls were cracked, the wood swollen and blackened, but they stood firm. A faint trickle of water dripped in the corner, echoing in the stillness. It looked almost like an ordinary basement now. Almost. Is it over? Lucy's voice trembled. Daniel kissed her damp hair. I don't know. But you're here. That's what matters. He forced himself to stand, his legs weak, and carried her toward where the stairs should have been. The steps reformed as he moved, rising out of the shadows. He didn't trust it, but it was the only way out. Each creak of wood beneath his feet felt like a test. He held Lucy tighter, expecting hands to seize him again. But none came. When they reached the top, the basement door opened on its own. Sunlight spilled across them, warm and golden. It smelled of earth and autumn air. Daniel blinked, almost blinded by the sudden brightness. He stepped through, and found himself standing outside. The hollow house was gone. He turned in a slow circle, heart hammering. The street stretched before him, lined with empty lots where houses should have stood. Weeds climbed broken sidewalks, and the trees were bare despite the season. It looked like a neighborhood long abandoned. Lucy tugged his sleeve. Daddy, where are we? He had no answer. The farmhouse, the town, even the highway, all gone. Only silence and ruin remained. Daniel set her down gently, crouching to her eye level. Whatever this is, we'll find a way through. Together. She nodded, though fear clouded her gaze. She pointed toward the distance. At the end of the street, a figure stood. Not faceless. Not one of the things from the house. It was the realtor. Her blazer was torn, her hair hanging limp around her shoulders. She raised a trembling hand in greeting, her face pale but human. Daniel's blood iced over. Daddy, Lucy whispered, clutching his hand. She doesn't look right. And Lucy was right. Because when the realtor smiled, her mouth split far too wide, stretching ear to ear. Welcome home. Daniel's stomach twisted as the realtor's grotesque grin widened. Her eyes shimmered like black pools, reflecting no light. Lucy whimpered and clutched his arm. He took a step back, his voice hoarse. Stay away from us. The realtor tilted her head, bones in her neck cracking with emotion. But you came back. They always do. I didn't come back. Daniel spat. I was dragged here. Her laugh was a brittle rattle, more like broken glass than joy. Dragged, signed, bound, it doesn't matter. A debt is a debt. Lucy pressed against him, whispering. Daddy, don't listen. Daniel scanned their surroundings. No doors, no houses, just endless, ruined street. The realtor was the only figure in sight. And yet, behind her words, he felt the whisper stirring again, faint but familiar, as though the house itself still watched. He straightened his shoulders. If you want me, then take me. But she... He pressed Lucy behind him. She's not part of this. The realtor's smile faltered. For the first time, her head tilted low, as if considering. Her voice softened into something almost kind. You think you can choose? You're still clinging to the illusion of choice. Daniel's fists clenched. Then what do you want from me? The realtor's smile returned, wider than before. To stay. The ground beneath Daniel's feet rippled like water. He stumbled, dragging Lucy back as the pavement buckled, turning soft and black. The ruined street melted, the weeds vanishing, the air filling with the metallic tang he knew too well. In a blink, the hollow house stood before them again. Whole. Waiting. Its windows were dark, its door wide open. Daniel's breath caught. No! Lucy shook her head violently, tears spilling down her cheeks. I don't want to go back. The realtor stepped aside, gesturing toward the house with one long, skeletal arm. Her voice was velvet and venom. It is already yours. You belong in it as much as it belongs in you. Daniel grabbed Lucy's hand and turned to run. The street stretched on, endless, but no matter how far they ran, the house loomed at the end, door yawning, pulling them closer. His lungs burned, his legs screamed, but the distance never changed. Lucy sobbed, stumbling. Daddy, we can't get away! He stopped, holding her close, heart pounding. The truth clawed at him, sharp and cruel. They couldn't outrun it. They could only face it. Daniel looked into the dark doorway. His voice was steady, though his body shook. "Then I'll face you inside. But she comes with me." The realtor's grin widened, and the house swallowed them both. The world warped as they crossed the threshold. Daniel clutched Lucy close, bracing for darkness, but instead he found himself standing in a hallway washed in soft, golden light. The air smelled of bread baking, of lemon polish and warm earth. For a fleeting moment it felt safe. Lucy blinked up at him, her trembling easing slightly. "Daddy, it looks nice now." Daniel didn't answer. He didn't trust it. The hallway stretched impossibly long, lined with doors on either side. Each was closed, their brass handles gleaming. Whispers seeped from behind them, low, indistinct, like people murmuring in another room. The realtor's voice floated from nowhere and everywhere. "Every occupant has a place, a room, a purpose. All you need to do is open a door." Daniel scanned the hallway. "And if I don't?" The house groaned. The walls seemed to inch closer, shadows crawling along the floor. "Then you'll wander forever," the voice cooed. "She will wander with you, until she is nothing at all." Lucy's grip on his shirt tightened. "Don't open them, Daddy. Please." He knelt to her level, brushing damp hair from her face. "Then we'll find our own way. We won't play by their rules." Her lip trembled, but she nodded. Daniel rose, determination in his chest. He strode down the hallway, past the endless rows of doors, dragging Lucy with him. Each step echoed unnaturally, the sound stretching longer than it should. The whispers grew louder, pleading now, begging for him to choose. At the very end of the hall, one door stood ajar. A thin line of darkness spilled from the crack, pooling across the floor like smoke. Unlike the others, its brass handle was blackened, warped as if scorched. Lucy shook her head violently. "Not that one." Daniel hesitated. It felt like a trap, but it was the only door not sealed tight. The house wanted him to pick. Maybe it feared what would happen if he didn't. "Stay behind me," he whispered, stepping closer. As he pushed it open, a rush of air sucked them both inside. They stumbled forward, and suddenly they were in the living room again. But it wasn't theirs. Furniture sat neatly in place, children's toys scattered across a rug. Family portraits lined the walls, smiling faces Daniel didn't recognize. A man and woman with 3 children, frozen in happy moments. Lucy gasped. "Daddy, look!" The family was there. Not in the pictures, sitting on the couch. But their eyes were hollow, their mouths stretched into silent screams. Their skin sagged gray, water dripping from their fingertips. One of the children raised a hand, pointing directly at Daniel. And the voices returned, merging into a single, deafening chorus. "Your turn." Daniel froze. The family on the couch didn't move, yet the air vibrated with their command. Lucy buried her face in his side, trembling. The mother's jaw creaked open, wider and wider until skin split along her cheeks. Black water spilled onto the rug. Her voice was layered with hundreds, a chorus of the damned. "Every debt is paid in flesh." Daniel pulled Lucy behind him, his chest tight with rage and terror. "Not hers." "You want me? Then take me." The father's head snapped toward him, the sound sharp as a breaking bone. His hollow eyes locked on Daniel's, and suddenly the weight of every life lost in the house pressed against his skull. He saw flashes, families screaming in basements, lovers dragged through walls, children pulled into black water. The father's voice cracked like thunder. "You already belong." Daniel staggered, clutching his head. The room tilted, the portraits bleeding black down the walls. Lucy clung to him, sobbing. "Daddy, don't listen!" Her voice pierced the fog. Daniel grit his teeth, forcing himself upright. "I'll never be part of this." The family rose in unison. Their movements were jerky, unnatural, like marionettes pulled by invisible strings. They stepped forward, mouths stretching open in silent screams, advancing on Daniel and Lucy. The house groaned around them. The walls bled. The floor buckled. Lucy's scream cut through the chaos. "Daddy, look!" The fireplace at the far wall flared to life, flames roaring bright white instead of red. The fire blazed so fiercely it lit the Hollow family in stark relief, shadows stretching grotesquely across the walls. For the first time, the advancing figures faltered, their hollow eyes twitching away from the light. Daniel pulled Lucy toward the hearth, the heat stinging his skin but filling him with desperate hope. "Stay close, Luce!" The family shrieked soundlessly, their jaws snapping like breaking wood. The mother lunged first, but the moment she crossed into the fire's glow, her body convulsed. Black liquid boiled from her skin, her limbs shriveling until she collapsed into ash. The father howled, grabbing the back of the couch with inhuman strength, flinging it across the room toward Daniel. He shoved Lucy down and dove aside as it splintered into the wall. "Daddy!" she cried, pointing to the fire. "They're scared of it." Daniel snatched a burning log from the grate, wielding it like a weapon. The flames licked dangerously close to his arm, but he didn't care. He swung it at the nearest child, the wood cracking across its hollow face. The figure shrieked, dissolving into black smoke that fled upward through the ceiling. The others recoiled, hissing, shadows boiling off their bodies. Daniel's voice was raw, furious. "You're not taking her. Not now. Not ever." He swung again, the fire roaring brighter as though feeding on his defiance. The last of the hollow children crumbled into ash, the father screaming before bursting apart in a violent spray of darkness. And then silence. Only the fire remained, roaring, filling the room with unnatural light. Lucy's hand found his. "Daddy, I think you hurt them." Daniel's grip tightened on the burning log. "Good." The flames hissed and spat, casting long shadows that quivered across the walls. Daniel kept the burning log raised, his chest heaving, sweat stinging his eyes. Lucy clung to his side, her gaze fixed on the corners of the room where the last traces of black smoke still drifted upward. "Did we beat them?" she asked, her voice small, trembling. Daniel swallowed hard. He wanted to say yes to give her comfort. But the house was breathing again, the walls flexing in and out like lungs. Low whispers slithered down the hallway, rising in pitch. The fight wasn't over, it had only changed. The fire in the hearth flared higher, and in its light, the portraits above it twisted. Smiling families melted into hollow-eyed husks, mouths stretched open in silent screams. Every frame wept black liquid that hissed when it touched the floorboards. Lucy whimpered, "Daddy, they're still here." Daniel tightened his grip on the log, forcing his voice steady. "Then we finish this." The room groaned, and the walls stretched outward, warping into a cavernous void. The couch, the toys, the rug, all disintegrated into ash. The hollow house was peeling away its disguise. From the void emerged the realtor, her suit shredded, her face elongated, mouth still split ear to ear. She stepped into the firelight without flinching, her black eyes burning with hunger. "You think fire saves you?" she hissed. Her voice was layered with countless others. "This house was born in fire. It feeds on fire." The flames sputtered as if choked, shrinking back from her presence. Daniel shoved Lucy behind him, his jaw clenched. "Then I'll burn it from the inside out." The realtor's grin widened. "Then you'll burn with it." The fire roared suddenly, exploding outward, engulfing the walls. Heat seared Daniel's skin as the house itself ignited. But instead of consuming it, the flames spread like veins, racing through the structure as though awakening something ancient. Lucy screamed, covering her ears. The whispers had grown deafening, layered with screams, chants, and laughter. Daniel raised the burning log like a torch. "If this place feeds on fire, then let it choke!" He hurled the log into the center of the room. The flames surged, climbing the walls, licking across the ceiling. The portraits curled and blackened, faces melting into ash. The realtor shrieked, her body convulsing as the fire clung to her like tar. She staggered forward, her grin cracking into jagged fissures. "You belong here," she screeched, her form unraveling. "You signed! You are the house!" Daniel grabbed Lucy, pulling her tight against his chest. No. I'm her father. That's all I'll ever be. The flames collapsed inward, swallowing the realtor whole. Her scream was swallowed by the roar of fire as the house shook violently, timbers cracking, floorboards splitting apart. The world tilted. Daniel and Lucy were thrown to the ground, flames circling them in a tightening ring. Smoke clawed at their lungs, the heat blistering their skin. Daniel shielded Lucy, pressing her face into his chest. "Hold on, baby. Just hold on." And then, with a sound like the earth itself tearing, the house collapsed. Everything went black. Daniel woke to silence. He opened his eyes slowly, expecting fire, expecting whispers. But there was nothing, only the chirp of crickets, the cool scent of damp grass. His body ached as if he had been beaten, but he was alive. He sat up, coughing smoke from his lungs. They were lying in a field, the night sky stretched wide above, stars burning clear and cold. Lucy stirred beside him, her small body pressed into his side. When she opened her eyes, she blinked at the stars in wonder. "Are we outside?" she whispered. Daniel looked around. No house. No realtor. No endless streets. Just a field bordered by trees, glowing faintly in the moonlight. He exhaled a shaky breath. "Yeah. I think we made it." Lucy clutched his shirt, her lip trembling. "For real this time?" He brushed her hair back gently, his chest aching with both love and guilt. "For real." For the first time in weeks, he let himself believe it. But then he noticed the dirt beneath his nails, black, clinging like oil. And in the distance, where the tree line met the horizon, a shape loomed. Squat. Familiar. A house. Daniel's stomach dropped. It wasn't the hollow house, not exactly. Its outline was warped, smaller, but its angles were wrong, crooked, leaning, like a memory half forgotten. Lucy followed his gaze and whimpered. No, Daddy, we got out. We burned it." "I know," he whispered, pulling her close. "Don't look at it." But the house pulsed faintly, as though breathing, its windows glowing dim amber like watchful eyes. And in the windless night, Daniel swore he heard it, faint knocking, carrying across the field. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. His jaw clenched. He had promised Lucy safety. He couldn't let this cycle drag her back. He lifted her in his arms. "We're leaving, Lucy. Tonight." They stumbled through the trees, Daniel's body screaming in pain, but he didn't stop. Each step carried them farther from the looming house. Branches whipped his arms, roots caught his shoes, but he pushed forward until the trees opened into a road. Headlights swept across them. A truck slowed, brakes screeching. A man leaned out the window, his voice startled. "Hey! You two all right out here?" Daniel almost wept with relief. But when he met the man's eyes, he froze. They were hollow. Daniel staggered back, clutching Lucy. "Stay away!" The driver frowned, or at least tried to. The skin around his mouth pulled too tight, stretching unnaturally. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "You look lost. Why don't you let me take you home?" The word home hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Lucy whimpered into Daniel's chest. "No," Daniel hissed. "We're not going with you." The driver tilted his head, and for an instant his face flickered, normal man, then hollow mask, then back again. The truck engine growled, but the sound was wrong, layered with whispers. "You already live there," the man said. Daniel turned and ran, Lucy's sobs muffled against him. His legs burned, but adrenaline drove him. He didn't stop until the road curved and the headlights were gone. They collapsed in a ditch, hidden by tall grass. Daniel held Lucy tight, rocking her. His chest ached, his mind unraveling. Everywhere they went, it followed. The realtor's words echoed in his mind, "You signed. You are the house." Daniel buried his face in Lucy's hair. "Then maybe the only way to end it is to end me." The thought sickened him, but it lingered, sharp and insistent. If the debt was tied to his name, to his blood, maybe sacrificing himself would sever the bond. Maybe Lucy could finally be free. But as he looked at her, her small, tear-streaked face pressed into his chest, he knew he couldn't just leave her. "Daddy?" she whispered. "Yeah, baby?" His voice cracked. "I don't want to be alone." Tears burned his eyes. "You won't be." He stroked her hair until her trembling slowed. She drifted into a restless sleep, exhaustion pulling her under. Daniel sat awake, staring at the horizon. And as dawn broke, the house appeared again. Closer this time. Its roofline jagged against the pale sky. Daniel stood, jaw tight. "All right," he muttered. "You want me? Then come and get me." He carried Lucy toward the rising sun, every step heavy with resolve. The house would not stop. But neither would he. They found a small town by midday. Real streets. Real people. Daniel almost collapsed with relief as he staggered into a diner, Lucy limp in his arms. The waitress gasped, rushing forward. "Oh my God! Are you all right?" Daniel managed a nod. We need help." They were seated, food brought out, warm coffee steaming. The waitress smiled kindly at Lucy, who devoured pancakes with shaking hands. For a moment, it felt normal. Safe. Until Daniel looked at the clock above the counter. It was the same clock from the farmhouse. Tick, tick, tick. Then knock, knock, knock. Daniel bolted upright, the sound reverberating through his skull. The waitress froze mid-step, her smile stiffening. The other patrons turned in unison, their eyes hollow, their faces slack. Lucy dropped her fork, trembling. "Daddy!" The whispers filled the diner, rattling the plates, shaking the floor. "Home!" Daniel grabbed Lucy's hand and ran. The door slammed behind them, glass shattering as the whispers followed into the street. The townspeople spilled out, moving in jerks, their hollow eyes locked on him. He sprinted down the block, lungs burning. Every window reflected the hollow house. Every shadow bent toward him. Lucy sobbed. "We can't get away!" He skidded into an alley, pressing her against the wall, shielding her with his body. His chest heaved, sweat dripping into his eyes. The air grew still. Too still. When he turned, the alley stretched impossibly long, twisting into darkness. At the far end, the hollow house stood, door wide open. Daniel's fists clenched. He couldn't keep running. Not forever. He crouched, cupping Lucy's face. "Listen to me, Luce. If we go in together. No matter what happens." She nodded, tears glistening in her hollowed eyes. "Together." Daniel kissed her forehead, then stood. He faced the house at the end of the alley, its mouth yawning wide. And he stepped inside. The air shifted the moment they crossed the threshold. The diner, the town, the alley, all gone. They stood in the hollow house again, the living room pristine, sunlit, inviting. Daniel's rage boiled over. "Enough games!" he roared. "You want me? Take me! But leave her alone!" The walls shuddered, and the realtor stepped into view, her grin wider than ever. Her voice was silk over steel. "You still don't understand. There is no you and her. There is only the house. And it wants both." Lucy clung to Daniel, shaking. "Daddy!" Daniel stepped forward, his body trembling but his voice firm. "Then you'll have to kill me first." The realtor's eyes glistened, her face splitting further until her mouth gaped impossibly wide. The house groaned, shadows pulling at her feet, crawling toward them. Lucy screamed as the floor cracked open again, black water rising. Daniel wrapped her in his arms. "Whatever happens, I love you." The water surged, swallowing their legs. Hands clawed upward, pulling, dragging, trying to tear them apart. Daniel fought, his grip iron around Lucy. The realtor's voice thundered over the chaos. "You are already ours. Stop resisting." Daniel screamed back, his voice breaking. "She is mine! She is not yours!" Lucy pressed her face into his chest, her voice small but steady. "Daddy, maybe if we both fight, it can't win." Her words sparked something deep inside him. He looked down at her tear-streaked face, then back at the shadows. Together, Luce. We fight together. She nodded, her small hands gripping his arms. Together. Light burst from her eyes, warm, golden, pure. It cut through the darkness, searing the hands that gripped them. Daniel felt it course through him too, fire and love surging in his veins. The house shrieked, walls splitting, windows shattering. The realtor's grin crumbled into ash as the light consumed her. The water boiled away. The whispers fell silent. And the hollow house began to collapse. Daniel and Lucy clung to each other as the house tore itself apart. Walls folded inward, beams splintered, the ceiling imploded. The golden light spread outward, devouring every shadow. The last thing Daniel saw was the faces, the countless hollow souls trapped inside. For one fleeting instant, they looked free, their eyes clear, their mouths soft with relief. Then they vanished in the blaze. The floor gave way. Daniel and Lucy fell, their screams swallowed by light. When Daniel opened his eyes again, he was lying on damp grass under a pale morning sky. Birds chirped faintly. The air smelled fresh, untainted. Lucy stirred beside him, blinking up at the clouds. "Daddy?" He sat up, his chest tight with hope and fear. The field was empty. No house. No realtor. No whispers. Just sky, earth, and silence. Daniel exhaled slowly, pulling her into his arms. I think we did it." For days they walked. They found roads that led to real towns, real people with real eyes. They ate, they slept, and no knocking came in the night. Still, Daniel couldn't shake the fear. Each shadow, each creak of wood beneath his feet, made his chest tighten. Lucy seemed lighter though, laughing again, coloring in diners, holding his hand without trembling. One night, as they lay beneath the stars, she whispered, "It's gone, isn't it?" Daniel kissed her forehead. "Yeah, baby. It's gone." But as he stared into the night sky, he saw it. Just for a moment, so faint he could almost dismiss it. A silhouette against the horizon. Windows like hollow eyes. The hollow house. Watching. Waiting. And Daniel knew some debts never truly died.